Okay, folks, so we're about 2 minutes after the hour. Bonjour. Goes without saying that we have to start this one with a big bonjour. My name is Eric. I'm the CEO of the Blockchain Supply Chain Association. Welcome to today's webinar. Glad to have everybody. Some folks are still joining. Please, a bit of housekeeping before we hand this over to our special guest today. Please use the Q&A button if you have any questions. We will monitor those. We'll also have a quick look at the chat from time to time, but please use the Q&A button. We are recording the session and we will make it available in a few days along with Sylvain's slides. And we will keep a few minutes at the end, maybe 10-15 minutes for some questions. So feel free to ask. We always love your questions. We always love interaction. And with that, I will pass the microphone over to our chapter president, Andrea, who will say quick words and move on. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric. Nice to restart and to kick the meeting of February off. Today, we're going to have a very special guest, as you said, Monsieur Sylvain Cariou of Crystalchain from France. So he's just on the other side of the Alps, so close to the place where I am also in culture, because being Florentine, so connected to Paris. So it's a pleasure and an honor for me to guest you today. This meeting follows the one in January where we touched on some topics related to sustainability and ESG. So we're following the red thread that marked year 2022, Sylvain. I'll leave the stage to you directly for you to kick in and to start sharing your slides, sharing your insights to the community. So we're eager to listen from you. And by the way, welcome again and glad to hear from you. The stage is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Andrea. Bonjour. That will be the only French word I will use during my presentation. So I will share some slides that will illustrate my speech. I share the screen. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes, perfect.
Okay, so I will do the presentation and then the Q&A will be at the end of the presentation. Is that right, Eric and Andrea?
Wait. Yes, correct.
Yes. Okay.
Sorry,
So
I'm mixing up the two languages from time to time. So from time yes.
Okay, si. Okay, grazie mille. Okay, the topic today is how data captured by blockchain traceability can help drive CSR strategy and increase trust in carbon offsetting and insetting. So there are two topics that are interrelated. Is the first one being CSR, and the second one is carbon offsetting and insetting. Quick presentation of Crystalchain, my company. I'm one of the three co-founders. The company was founded in 2016. The initial objective of the company, and is still use the blockchain for non-financial purpose, basically traceability solution. So that is what we do since 2016. And I'm also the chairman of the French ISO blockchain committee. There is a technical committee founded by the International Standard Organization, ISO, on blockchain. The objective is raise trust in that technology and awareness on that technology is not to normalize, to prevent innovation, but more publishing norms in order to make more and more people use that technology. So 40 countries approximately are working on that, on these norms, and the France is a very active country on that, and I chair the French Commission. The activity of Crystalchain, we basically work on three sectors, because these three sectors are the most active, one of the most active in terms of traceability and transparency. There's the agri-food sector, the fashion and luxury, and also the circular economy. Here on the right-hand side, you have some of our clients. You might know some of them, like Carrefour, Suez, also French company, In Vivo, which is a big French company. We work also for a big luxury brand, and I'm not allowed to say the name, but it's a very famous one. And so we work for small, very small company and also very large company. And the traceability we implement involve European countries also, of course, but also we trace up to South America, Africa, North Africa, South Africa, Asia, and Australia. So I think that we have around the table or around the webinar people from the supply chain industry, and when you say supply chain, you know that everything is international. Oh. Next slide. Yeah, okay. So the agenda, first topic is from traceability to CSR. It's the Crystalchain journey from 2016 to 2023. First topic is CSR, what it is. I know everybody knows, but it's better to ensure that we all have the same words behind CSR. What are the difficulties and what are the benefits of blockchain? And the same structure for insetting and offsetting. What it is, what are the difficulties and the benefit of blockchain. And then I will propose some topics for further reflections. And also I will welcome very, very much any question or comments on my presentation at the end. So my presentation is supposed to last 45 minutes, I believe. So I hope I will stick to that time frame. So what is traceability? At the beginning of Crystalchain, traceability was about tracing raw materials and then semi-finished product to final product all along the supply chain. Here there is an example of the traceability of the wool supply chain from the sheep at the very beginning. Then from the sheep, the wool, you create wool tops, which is wool that is washed and then combed. Then you produce yarn, then fabric, then garment, and then you distribute the garment. So this supply chain on that graph, on that slide, is very linear, but you can imagine that we have thousands and hundreds and thousands of breeders, sheep breeders, tens of wool top factory, etc., etc. It's not linear; it's more like a tree. But the basic what I call the basic traceability is following the physical flow and getting data about this flow. So the first implementation we've made of our platform was about getting information about the lot of wool top that was being produced, the quantity and quality, and then the quantity of yarn that was produced, etc., etc. Then, as Crystalchain or any company, we are listening to our clients and our clients' demand, and also the demand of non-clients, the demands of the market. People or clients wanted to have more than just following the physical flow, but also collecting any kind of data that will enrich the knowledge of the final product, because it's very interesting to know that that sweater, the name of the sheep that gave the wool to produce the sweater, but also what were the condition of breeding, what were the condition of working condition in the different factories. So what we do now is we do what we call augmented traceability, is traceability of physical flow, but also adding anything that could give more information about the impact of the final product. So we can collect information about the animal well-being. We collect also the result of audits, the quality control, water consumption, electricity consumption, social audits, etc. The objective is for the brand to know as much as possible what is happening at their suppliers level and supplier of the supplier, etc., etc. That's very strange to present that to you without having any reaction. So Andrea or Eric, if you think there is something that is not precise enough, please intervene.
We won't hesitate to let you know. For the moment, it's great.
Okay, thank you. So far, so good. Okay. So augmented traceability, you have an example on the right-hand side of typical dashboard that we can produce with all this data. The objective is to, for example, prove regulatory compliance. For example, in some countries, like in the US, it's forbidden to import cotton coming from certain region of China. It will be the case in Europe, where soon it will be forbidden to import cocoa coming from deforestation. So the regulation is becoming more and more strict in terms of environmental and ethics matter. So companies will have to prove that they comply to this rule. It's also to reduce health risk, because I've said earlier, we work for the agro-food industry. So the company, the brand wants to be sure that their products are safe. Augmented traceability is also to optimize physical flow, to avoid having too many inventory and the specific point of the supply chain, to reduce lead time, etc. In the luxury market, some raw materials are quite rare, so it's very important for the brand to know that they will have enough raw material to produce the quantity of final product they want to produce. It's also to protect the brand, because the brand wants to know before the journalist that there is an issue among their suppliers. And also, as many companies are having CSR strategy, they want to be sure to measure the results of their strategy and to communicate on that. What is CSR? Okay. Oh, I have to move the bar, zoom bar. Okay. So I've put here some words that could describe what is CSR. So CSR is for corporate social responsibility. The idea is the company is responsible for its own activity within its own factories, but also is responsible for what's happening at their supplier level in terms of, there are usually three items: impact on the environment, animal well-being, and also a condition of work. These are usually the three topics on CSR. And also because in some countries it's very difficult to enforce the regulation, because in some countries you have corruption, and the government is not strong enough to ensure that the regulation is respected. So the pressure is put on Western companies, North American and European companies, to be sure that their suppliers that are in this country comply with regulation. So CSR is about accountability. The company is responsible for what they do and what their suppliers do. It's also about reporting, because okay, you can have the best intention, but also you have to prove that. You have to give feedback on what you're doing. It's holistic. It's not only giving information and controlling what's happening within your employees, with the government. Also, what does your activity does for or against the local communities, even if the local community is not directly involved in your company. CSR might be regulatory. It's about complying with the regulation, but also voluntary. And what we can see that usually companies are improving their practices in a voluntary way, but at some point of time, the regulation will increase the expectation. So even if you are a good company with a high level of CSR expectation, in a few years from now, this high level of expectation will be the standard. So we see that, especially for the environment, the regulation is getting more and more exigeant, demanding. CSR is also about measuring. We can have a return on investment on CSR because some banks, some financing companies, they want to check if you comply with the regulation or with some ethics standards before giving money to you. It's also a good way to, in some industry, to, if you behave badly with your employees, you take the risk of losing those employees or being banned out of the country. CSR is also about reputation, like I said earlier. And there is an emergency, maybe because I'm biased, because I'm very much involved in environment, but I see more and more articles and TV shows about the emergency of global warming. So I can see also that more and more clients of Prospect are calling Crystalchain or my competitors to implement a traceability solution because they want to comply with what is the emergency now. Next slide. Okay, that's not a very quiet journey implementing CSR. I've put a photo, an image on the right side of the slide. It describes, funnily, I hope, what is implementing CSR. It's a quite complex. Implementing CSR, it's about implementing a solution or solutions that will measure or evaluate your CSR efforts and show where you can improve and where do you meet your expectation. So the difficulties is that you have numerous stakeholders. A given company can have maybe hundreds of suppliers of level 1, and each supplier level 1 will have hundreds of supplier level 2, etc., etc. So you have numerous stakeholders. What could be difficult also is that the supplier can change from one year to the other year, from year to year. That's why I have noticed that if you want to improve if you have a CSR strategy and you want to improve your practices, it's better to have long-term partnership with your supplier, let's say 3 years contract, because in that case you could also help your supplier improving their activity. Otherwise, if you don't give this visibility to your supplier, it will be very difficult to make them improve their practice. So, like I said earlier, the supply chains are international. In some specific case, like the food industry, you can have very local supply chain from the production, let's say, fruits down to the market. The local market, it could be very local, but usually the supply chain we work on are international. So you have language barrier, you have a cultural barrier, you have a problem of connection of these companies to the internet. The difficulties is also about regulation. The different regulation we can have from one country to the other one. But also, I have had the case of, in some cases, it's difficult to collect data from some countries because these data are supposed to stay in that country. So this is a difficulty. There is a problem also about the data quality. So data quality is this information true? Is it precise? Does the person who gave me the information have the same understanding of the meaning of that information? So data quality is a big issue. Confidentiality also, because collecting data about the supply chain, you can have some suppliers that don't want to give you this data because they fear that you will use this data for another topic than that was expected, and also give that data to your competitors. So it's very important to respect the confidentiality of the information. And also, and the image on the right is an illustration. CSR is a very complex topic because you need competence in supply chain, in manufacturing, in environmental impact on the air, water impact, energy consumption, calculation. You have to animate a group of people that don't necessarily want to work with one another. And these expertise are usually rare. In France, at least, a CSR manager is as a competence that is very much needed, and companies have difficulties in recruiting this kind of profile for the moment, of course. So the blockchain. So I believe that a lot of people around the table, no, it's not a table, around the screen know what is blockchain, unless Andrea or Eric, you say the contrary. I don't have to explain what is blockchain, or do I have to?
No, I guess the audience is already aware of what blockchain and distributed ledger technology is about. So pretty confident with that.
Okay.
2 cents. You can go ahead and skip the stage.
Okay. So the benefit of blockchain, one benefit is accountability. Just before this webinar, I had a meeting with one of my clients. And the question was, okay, but if the supplier gives us information that we are not able to control, and if this information is false. Okay, of course, it's always the same question. Andrea and Eric, you might know that usually people say, if you put information to the blockchain, who knows that the information is true and accurate? The first answer I give to that is accountability, because the person or the company that put information to the blockchain signs it. The information is time-stamped and therefore ever. So if somebody someday finds that this information is false, the company takes a risk. So you are accountable to this information. It's not like filling a Google form and then forget it. So you put information in the blockchain, you sign. It's just like going to the notary. This is so the answer I gave to my client earlier this afternoon. He was very happy of that. On top of that, usually it's not like in the Bitcoin ecosystem where nobody knows who is who. Everybody is pseudonymous. In traceability and CSR, traceability for CSR, everybody knows who is who. Everybody has got an ID, and we know who is recording what kind of information. So if somebody finds someday that you put some false information to the blockchain, you take a risk of being pulled off the supply chain or lose the business. The benefit of blockchain, I would say, like, it's open source. What I mean by that is the code is known and everybody knows the rules. There is no hidden trick or hidden door. Everything is transparent, which is very important. It's also decentralized, like you might know. I've got an example on that. A few years ago, I've made a project for Carrefour, which is a big French retailer, traceability of chicken. And we had a meeting with a abattoir, slaughterhouse, which was a small slaughterhouse. They fear sharing the information with Carrefour. And they said to us, well, yes, but what do we know about what Carrefour does with the data? Carrefour is big, we are very small. Then I explained that blockchain is about decentralization. They will have a copy. They will know where is the information. And if there is a Carrefour records information, they will know about that. So blockchain is a good means for giving confidence on within actors that are not the same size, not from the same company, not having the same culture. Of course, timestamping. Encryption might be important. Also, it's not necessarily related to the blockchain by itself, but to give confidence, you have also to to ensure to the stakeholders, to the users of the blockchain, that some data could be encrypted and and decrypted only on request for a specific purpose. Because we are talking about transparency, of course, but full transparency is not necessarily required by the user. Let's imagine you have two suppliers of the same company, and supplier A doesn't want that supplier B knows about its activity with the client. So with our blockchain or with BNB blockchain, we can set very precisely who can see what. And also governance. Usually on blockchain, the governance is not on specific blockchain, is not on the blockchain, but it's also usually off-chain. And the ISO has published earlier last year standard on that, on the governance of blockchain. It's very important when you set up a blockchain system, a blockchain platform, that you write down what are the rules. What kind of data do you accept? What can be done with the data? Who do you accept as a participant of the blockchain, etc., etc. So with these technical and organizational benefits of blockchain, we can answer some of the difficulties in implementing a blockchain for your CSR strategy. Blockchain is not. A few years ago, blockchain was praised as the ultimate solution of transparency, etc., etc. Of course, but when you have to implement this kind of solution, you always have to talk with humans. So humans don't act like machines. So there is a lot of work to do to convince, to explain, to understand what are your process, what do you need, how can I help you, etc., etc., etc. That's why usually we start with implementing the traceability solution with a small subset of suppliers, then to prove to the other what we have done, and to have the other suppliers of the client jump into the solution. Okay, that's it for this part. The second part is about. I'm looking at the time. Okay, I'm on time. Even a little bit early on time, so we'll have more time for the questions. Insetting and offsetting. I don't know if everybody knows about that. You might know the principle of offsetting. Let's say you take a plane from Paris to New York, or from Florence to Paris, I don't know. And this your flight will emit a certain quantity of CO2, or your seat. You being a part of the plane, you emit a certain quantity of CO2. So you might compensate that by buying carbon credit. So carbon credit is a financing project that are there to reduce the quantity of CO2 in the atmosphere by capturing the CO2 or planting trees, for example, or preserving area like mangrove that can take the CO2 from the atmosphere. So that's the principle of offsetting. It's about compensation. You can compensate your CO2 emission, or also financing project that will protect or improve the biodiversity, which is another very hot topic at the moment, or improve the water usage. So you have two types of offsetting. You have offsetting if you buy CO2 credit from somewhere in the planet. And insetting is when a company buys a CO2 carbon credit or eco credit within their ecosystem. Usually, if you have a company that produces food, they will finance the person, the agriculture, the peasant that produce let's say the wheat, for example, the corn, and to help him or her reduce its CO2 emission. And by this way, it will make a compensation between the CO2 emission of the final factory and the reduction of CO2 from the very beginning of the supply chain. So these are the two. But maybe for those who can read The Guardian in the UK or Le Monde in France, I'm sure in other countries you've heard about that. The CO2 market is not very transparent, and some scandals were appeared in the last days, in the last week. The problem is the basic problem is might be the double counting. You have a CO2 reduction project, and this project will emit CO2 tokens, CO2 coins somehow, and this coin can be sold twice. And also, you have a perfect CO2 reduction project, and then as the time goes on, the objectives are not met. Typically, when you have a project where the company selling the CO2 credits commit to plant 1,000 trees, but 1 or 2 years after, part of the tree died or were cut by the company for any kind of reason. So you have this problem of following the reality of the project along the years. So when somebody wants to emit carbon credit, you have 3 phases. The design phase, so you design your project with some consultants, auditor, etc. Then there is a company like Gold Standard or Label Bas Carbone in France or Vera worldwide that will check the validity of the project and the measurement of the CO2 reduction, and then they will give like a coin detailing the project, and then this CO2 token is sold to a final company. So we have 3 problems. The first problem is we lack information on what is the project. We have only part of the information on that project. And also another problem with that is usually projects are costly, and people developing projects need money to develop the project. But as the information is missing or not, people have not enough confidence into the project. It's very difficult to get money to finance the project, even if many banks and financiers, they are looking for environmental friendly projects. So this is the first difficulty. Then when the project is sold on the market, the CO2 token is sold on the market, it's impossible to know where, in some cases, where the project comes from and what are the latest news of on that project, because the project can evolve, reduce or increase in terms of CO2 reduction. And also when the token is sold, there is no traceability on who owns the token. And you can see me coming because the blockchain can answer to some, if not all, of these problems. And Crystalchain is working at the present time on that, on the solution answering to that these problems. So the benefits of blockchain, what could bring the blockchain to these issues? Well, smart contract on NFT. Earlier, I talked about traceability. Traceability is about putting into the blockchain information about a given event. Okay. Here, with that topic on the CO2 reduction, we can develop NFT that will describe in a very structured way what is the token, how many tons of CO2 is avoided, where is the project, what are the documents, So you might know that the documents are not in the blockchain, but there is a link between the blockchain and a document that is put on IPFS, for example. So we can imagine, and we are currently working on that, on an NFT describing very precisely what is this project, what are the measures of the project, and also who owns the project. That's the second topic. Who owns the token? It's like a Bitcoin. One Bitcoin can't be sold twice. An NFT that holds in itself a certain amount of CO2 avoidance is only sold once. And also, this NFT can be updated with the latest news on the project. If trees are cut or more trees are planted, we can update the NFT describing the project, and you have all the NFT in the NFT, all the history of the project. We can mix on an NFT structured data like the GPS coordinate or the location, the number of trees, the CO2 avoided, etc. And unstructured data like audit report, etc. It's tamper-proof like any blockchain. And you can have also the traceability of owners. You can have in that market. This market is very complex, the CO2 market, because you have many actors, many marketplaces, and it's not very liquid. But having NFT describing a CO2 token and being standardized, it can bring you can have a market which is more visible, liquid, and therefore you can bring more money into that market. And also you have, once you have your NFT in your wallet, you are the sole owner of this CO2 token. Well, some question, and I won't answer to those questions, and I'll give it to the audience if you want to react on these further reflections. The first being the interoperability of blockchain. At Crystalchain, we are using Ethereum blockchain, which is a choice we've made a few years ago, but we are investigating other blockchain that can be useful for other kind of usage. So this raises the question of interoperability of blockchain. I'm in a blockchain. What kind of confidence can I have with the data that is on another blockchain? So ISO is working on that, and I know you have also some solution that do this interoperability. The second topic, and I'm sure if we have supply chain people around the screen, is about the standardization of data model. If a company doing, for example, leather describe its activity a certain way, you can have another company doing also leather, a tannery that describe its activity a different way. So it's very difficult to interoperate the data model, the description of these two activities. Hopefully, when you have with some standards like ISO 14000, which is a standard about environment management, these standards gives a frame of description of a company activity. So this helps in standardizing the data models. It's not necessarily enough. Another reflection is about, this is a very vast topic, and last topic is about governance. Who owns the blockchain? The answer is nobody, but who decides to on the evolution of the blockchain, on its functionality, etc. Confidentiality is another topic. At Crystalchain, we have one answer. It's not necessarily the best answer. It's not the only answer. And the last topic, it's I've talked about this topic earlier. It's about the link between the physical world, not the link, but when I see something in the digital world, in a blockchain, does it reflect precisely what is really happened, what has really happened in the physical world? AFNOR, so AFNOR is the French Association for Standardization, which is the equivalent of ISO in France, is working on that, on a standard that will give trust on the information that is put in the blockchain, saying that this information reflects the reality of what happened at a certain time. Well, 40 minutes, Andrea and Eric. I'm
You're
open
perfectly on time, Sylvain. That is seriously perfect. There are a few questions here in the chat. I would love to start, if you don't mind, Sylvain, with Israel Serrano. First question, he asks, how do you ensure that the physical world in the farms belongs as example to a specific shirt in the retailer store, even at the batch level?
Okay, the discussion is in. The question is in Q&A or discussion. How do you ensure that?
Yeah, how do you ensure?
How do you ensure that the physical wool in the farm belongs as to a specific shirt in the retailer store? The traceability couldn't be finer or more precise than what happens in the real world. If there is a mix, if you have two batches of greasy wool, so the greasy wool is the wool. Yes, Andrea? Okay, no, I thought you were saying something.
No.
If you have two batches that are mixed together, and which is the case, two batches of greasy wool that are mixed together, which is the case because you have to mix the wool to have the specific quality at the end. We are not able to say this sweater comes from this area, but we would say the wool from this sweater comes from these two areas, of course. In a batch level. How do you ensure that I don't know if it answered the question. How do you ensure that the physical wool in the farms belongs as e.g. to a specific shirt? So the story, what we do is we do traceability chain. We have events on the supply chain, and we link these events from one another. So a sweater is produced, is coming from a work order at the factory level. And this work order, the factory declares that the sweater was produced from this lot of yarns. Then we ask the yarn factory, where does the yarn, this lot, specific lot of yarn comes from, etc., etc. So we are going from downstream upstream to upstream.
So you can, maybe with the QR code, track a specific shirt or a specific piece of garment all the way back to the specific farm, or even a batch number, a lot number, right?
Exactly, yes. So in that case, what we do, we don't give the names of the farmers because it's a secret to the consumer, but we give the region. We say that, okay, this sweater, 40% of the wool comes from Uruguay, for example, and the rest come from Argentina. But the person, the CSR manager or the quality manager at the brand level has all the details of the traceability chains. It's always the same story. We say something to the consumer, but we have more details. The company has more details about the supply chain.
Cool, thank you, Sylvain. We have a second question, by the way, from an anonymous attendant. He's asking, or she's asking, of course, what is the value for different supply chain players to gain the very detailed level of transparency if there is no regulation requirement? That's a tricky question. It goes straight to the point, to quite an important point.
Yes, that's a very important point. Like I said earlier, traceability for CSR, it's partly a technical topic, but not only. And this question is about, it's not a technical question. And that's why I said earlier that if you want to implement, if a brand, fashion brand or, I don't know, food brand wants to implement its traceability for CSR, it's better that they have good relations with their suppliers, good relations saying that, okay, we make a contract, a 3-year contract. In that contract, I guarantee a certain amount, certain volume of sales for you, and in counterpart, you engage to give the data for traceability. You commit to improve your behavior, etc., etc. So it's not a yes or no; it's always negotiation. And the second part of the question is about regulation. For example, in the food industry, traceability is mandatory because one company has to know where does the raw material come from. But blockchain and blockchain platform go beyond that with real-time traceability. So, of course, like I said earlier, you have the regulation expectation, okay, the expectation of the regulation, and some companies are having more expectation, more demanding than the regulation. So, of course, if one supplier doesn't want to play the game or the new demands of its clients, he can say no, but there is a risk that the client will find another supplier. Maybe they will have two movements. Supplier will improve their practice in order to be compliant with the requirement of their clients, and some who won't, and maybe they will disappear from the market.
Perfect. Thank you, Sylvain. There is a question from Jonathan Grant, my friend Jonathan from UK. He's asking, how big is the challenge in collecting all the data and keeping it updated from actors in supply chain?
It depends. So, okay, that's a very good question. No, it depends because what we do in general is we establish a direct connection between the blockchain and the ERP of the company or the system that holds the data. So once the connection is made, there is a daily or weekly update of the data. Okay, but in some cases, it's not feasible because if you have some very small workshop or a breeder, they don't have, they have Excel at the best. So in that case, we are at Crystalchain, we have a special service for that. We charge licenses for using our system, and we have an option where we check if the data is consistent or not. We check if the data is missing or not, and if it's missing, we call the supplier to check if there is a problem and ask the supplier to update the data, the production data.
And that brings a great point, Sylvain, right? It's not everybody who has the resources a Carrefour has or a bigger company have, but that shouldn't scare smaller vendors or manufacturers to participate in something like that, because at one point also it's going to steer them in the right direction towards the technology, helping them to understand, even if it starts with a mobile phone application or an Excel spreadsheet or a web portal, right? It's at least bringing them into a digital product, whereas today, a lot of these, to your point, are still using paper for their processes.
Exactly, Eric. You're absolutely right. The traceability for CSR is not yes or no, it's a journey. And some of the users of platform are very happy of using it because before that they didn't have any system or Excel, but some of them are using our platform to flow their inventory and their flows. So it could bring also a new service to them.
That's a great point.
The BSCA is about blockchain, but here the discussion is more about the real world with real people having real problems.
Well, this is what blockchain and DLTs are for in the end. It's not getting too far from the real world. The more you stick to reality and to your everyday world, the more useful technology will be. I mean, this is my own view into this. So we have a technology that sticks almost perfectly to this case of CSR and ESG. Let's call it how we like the most. There's one more question, Sylvain. You see that as long as we progress with questions, they do pop up constantly. So we again have Israel asking, in the traceability of wool, how do you ensure that the shirt or pullover that you buy in the retailer belongs to a specific ship? Oh, I guess it's almost the same. Yeah.
It's the same question, no?
Yeah. Twice.
And if I can just add to that, Sylvain, I don't know if it's involved in your technology, but I've also seen other solutions out there that actually rely on sheep facial recognition to identify a specific sheep, because they have different facial attributes, and you can identify with machine learning and vision,
which is somehow scary, cool
technologies. You can go down to the sheep level, which is crazy stuff.
Yes. And I will add also that for some of our clients, we do at Crystalchain, like I would call the document traceability. We trace data. But there are also other companies that trace the physical, they put tracers. They analyze the product to check if this product comes from this area. You can do that with cotton, for example. So these two approaches are complementary. And the face recognition, it's feasible, okay, but practical, is it scalable also?
Yeah.
Oh, there is a question about Carrefour. Israel Serrano says, I was the one leading the Carrefour project of the chicken.
Yes.
Okay.
It was just a remark since he pointed out.
Okay.
One more question. Oh, sorry,
okay,
go ahead.
I was on the Carrefour chicken project, the same in France. I don't know if Israel comes from France, but I was on that project. Maybe we missed each other.
Yeah. There's also, again, Jonathan is asking, are there any international standards like ISO for the CSR and ESG data that you collect?
Actually, there are many standards on CSR. You have general standards like the ISO 26000, which describe what is CSR, how would you describe what are the commitments of the company, which is very general. And then you have standards per, usually per activity or per material. You have standards for cotton, a standard for leather, for wool, etc., etc. So usually my clients, they choose one or two standards that fit to their needs. There's no, you have many labels, many standards, etc.
Cool, perfect. One more question from Srilata Kavuri. I don't know how to pronounce the name properly. I hope I didn't make a mistake. As a beginner in blockchain, I like to get an idea of what programming language and technology stack is efficient in blockchain, especially in supply chain domain.
Oh, I'm not a specialist. I would need to invite my R&D director. Actually, for smart contract, you have many languages. Solidity is one of the languages used the most for programming smart contract. And then in our system, on many blockchain system, you have the blockchain, and around the blockchain, you have all these modules that the modules that collect the information, that does the interface with the external world, modules that check the information consistency, other modules that deliver data for dashboards. And the language used are, we use Java, for example, or React for the user interface. It depends on several topics. It depends on is that language fit for this purpose? For example, React is okay for user interface. And also it depends on the resources you can employ. Because I don't know in other countries, but in France, it's quite difficult to hire developers. So you have languages that are fashionable at the moment, and other languages, programming languages that are not very
à la mode.
à la mode, voilà, fashion. So we have this balance, you know. You have old-fashioned language and new language, and you have to make the best choice given all these parameters.
So going ahead with questions, one more from the anonymous attendant is asking, or she's asking, what is the benefit for the farmer or supplier? Do they get better price for their commodity?
Usually, yes. Usually,
this is one more interesting question to answer, Sylvain, I guess.
Yes. Usually, yes, because when a brand, let's say a fashion brand, want to, I'm usually talking about fashion because fashion is at the very edge of traceability and CSR, because the fashion brands are very sensitive to reputation, and there is a big risk in losing reputation and money. So they are very vigilant to that. So what do? Is they sign contract with suppliers like farmers or cooperative. Usually they contract with the cooperative which represents several farmers, and there is a deal made, negotiation. So we will buy your cashmere, for example, for the next 3 years. In exchange of that, you will train yourself to the new practices. We will buy your cashmere at a higher price. We will give you money before you sell us the cashmere to give you money for the winter, and when you sell to us the cashmere, will give you the rest of the money, etc. So there is a deal that is made between the brand and its supplier, and usually it's for a higher price. And what is very important for the farmers is, of course, the price, but also the visibility. For example, for cocoa, you plant cocoa for 10 or 20 years. So you don't want that the price go down the next year. You want to be sure to sell your cocoa for 10 or 20 years. And at the end, the brand, thanks to this traceability, can protect its brand reputation and also sell at a higher price.
Nice. There is a question from my friend Stefano Negrini, the one that came right before you, end of January. So he's asking, Sylvain, thanks for a very clear presentation about traceability. Indeed, now still low amount of regulations, but increasing and more coming up. Question is, does your tool already allow or will allow eventually real-time traceability along the chains?
Yes. Oh, that's yes. The answer is yes. But also it depends on the real time, the frequency with which the supplier of the data gives us the data. If we are connected to an ERP, we collect the data every day. But if the data is given by a cooperative through an Excel file, usually it gives it updates the Excel file to our system every week. So the data is, once it's in our system, we check the data, we make the links, and then this is real time in 5 minutes approximately. An important thing also is our system is asynchronous, meaning that we don't have to wait that the upstream gives the data before the entity afterwards gives us the data. Everybody fills the data at their own pace, and we make the link with the different events in a real time.
So maybe one last question, Andrea.
Yes,
we're on
yes.
top
The last
of the
question from Jasmine Kaur. Can you elaborate on future reflections? How can data standardization be achieved?
Great
we
question.
go back to the standards and standardization, which is, I guess, is your domain, Sylvain. And,
yes.
And
can you repeat the question?
Can yours too.
How does standardization help, Sylvain?
Data standardization. So we've worked with Unici. I don't know if you know Unici. It's a division of the United Nations.
United Nations. They're doing things about trade, traceability,
exactly,
a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
They publish standards to facilitate international trade.
Exactly.
They have worked on traceability of leather and cotton. For the moment, they have described the different steps of the process, very detailed. On my opinion, this is the best they can do, describe the different steps of the process. Going further into the detailed data model, describing what is the exact data model of every event in every step of the process, in the tannery, in the slaughterhouse, etc. It's too complex. My opinion is company, brand, on tannery, on slaughterhouse, etc. They will elaborate data model describing their activity, and then with years, some years, they will converge to a single data model. But it will be not very efficient to gather around a table and let's discuss what could be the ideal data model for a given industry, for the leather, for the cotton. It will take too much time for that, for discussion, etc. We have the case in France. Okay, so it's better that everybody does its own data model, the way of tracing their industry, and then we could adapt, because information systems can adapt very quickly. I don't know if I understand. Okay, it's about data standardization. Okay, I have a lot of discussion with data standardization in the industry, in traceability, etc., in blockchain. It's always the same problem. Of course, if you have data standardization of email, SMTP, which is the protocol for email, it's very simple because it's very standard. But if you want to standardize the data describing a process, that's very much complicated. So I don't see anything that everybody will do its best and then we will adapt or develop some bridge between two systems.
And that's part of the work that we do at TC307, Sylvain, right? Because you represent France, I represent Canada, and we have those discussions on a weekly basis.
Yes, but at TC3, yes, there is a discussion about data flows on blockchain. Mm-hmm. But I'm not sure they will publish at the end a way of describing data on the blockchain. I'm not sure. For the moment, the TC307, which is the technical committee for blockchain, works on principle for governance, principle of architecture. They work on vocabulary, of course, yes. Something very precise, of course. Then I don't know. I'm not God.
It's ISO, right? It takes a while.
Any more questions? Oh, time's up.
All right, time is up.
Okay.
Yep, time's up at this moment. We exceeded actually a few minutes, but it was a very interesting conversation. I guess you touched on a few topics there under everybody's lens at the moment. So on every side of the ocean. So it was great talking and touching all the points. So I'll give the steer back to my good friend Eric on the other side of the ocean in Canada. So up to you to close this one and give appointment to the folks to the next ones in March. Thanks for joining us today.
And thank you, Andrea, as usual. And merci beaucoup, Sylvain. It was very informative. Thank you, everybody, for your participation today. Israel, who was one of our commenters, he mentioned that he was from Spain. He'll be speaking with our Spanish speaking audience with our Latin American chapter in a couple of weeks, I think. And we also have our next webinar planned for the 8th of March coming up. So we'll send a bit of information on that. Sylvain, again, merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. Yep. We'll be sending out an email with the links and the YouTube link and the slides within a couple of days. So with that, enjoy the rest of your day, everyone.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Andrea. Bye.
Merci.
Merci et à bientôt.